The return. ESPN is back. It's been a couple of weeks. It's been at least 3 weeks since I've done an episode. I didn't do any pre-fight breakdowns for UFC 237 or Bellator 221. I've just been busy with schoolwork. I've been having to get a lot of shit done for my internship. So now I'm officially done with that. This summer, we're going to be focusing a lot on MMA and growing this podcast overall, and especially my Instagram page. Been trying out some new things, and they've been working, and they've been pretty successful so far. So I'm just happy that school is over for the summer. I don't have to deal with any more bullshit. And I could talk about what I actually want to talk about, and that is MMA, and in general, any sort of combat sport or sport. So right now, this past weekend, we had Bellator 221, like I said before, and Bellator and UFC 237, headlined by Rose Namajunas and Jessica Andrade. First things first, let's go over to Bellator. Let's get that out of the way right now. Michael Venom Page versus Douglas Lima. Michael Venom Page on the feet is great. Not denying that. His karate background, his Kyokushin background, and his ability to move inside and outside of the pocket, and his ability to strike you and where you can't hit him, and his ability to draw you in and land the effective shot, it's beautiful. However, it did not work on Douglas Lima, who himself, I think, is one of the best strikers in welterweight history in any organization. So I would have liked to see Michael Venom Page when he got dropped from Douglas Lima originally. I would have liked to see him pull guard maybe. I wouldn't have liked to see him stand right back up after Douglas Lima is standing over him, because as soon as that happened, Douglas Lima landed that uppercut and he was out cold. So definitely wasn't the most smart move by Michael Venom Page in terms of ring awareness. I think he definitely should have pulled guard and tried to be more defensive off his back and try to work up from there, but he did not, and that's what led to his demise. And then Patricio Pitbull, we had him fighting Michael Chandler. He knocked out Michael Chandler in round one. That was super, super impressive, and now Patricio is a featherweight champion and the current lightweight champion in Bellator. I believe that is the second two-time champion besides Ryan Bader, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong. Don't fact check me on that. But it's still very impressive to see what he did. And Patricio is definitely one of the best fighters in Bellator history. Now, I do have to say this. He is another Captain Eric coached product, which, mind you, Captain Eric is very close friends with Henry Cejudo, and he is his coach. And right now, I have him as the front runner for Coach of the Year for 2019. Look what Henry Cejudo did to TJ Dillashaw, and look at Patricio and Patricky Pitbull and what they've been able to do so far in 2019. Patricio now a two-time champion, holding both belts simultaneously, just beat the lightweight king, Michael Chandler, who a lot of people believe could have possibly been the best lightweight in the world, but was never really, not that he wasn't tested, but wasn't UFC tested, so you can't really give him that recognition. So very impressive from Patricio. Bellator 221 was not a dud at all. But now for I wouldn't say the most important news, but the one that I invested most of my time in, and that's UFC 237. So give me 1 second. Let me just pull up the card and go over everything. All right. So this was, as I like to explain this, and I explained this before the fight happened, not obviously on the podcast, but to my friends, this was really a retirement card. I mean, you had Big Nog fighting on the card. He's 42 years old, who got knocked out by Ryan Spann. We had BJ Penn fighting Clay Guida. And obviously, BJ Penn's a legend, and so was Clay Guida. People forget how good Clay Guida was back in the day. He was the first person to really crack the code that was Anthony Pettis. When Anthony Pettis first came into the UFC, Clay Guida laid down the blueprint for how to beat someone who's a good striker, and that is to use your wrestling. Mind you, that blueprint was established before, but no one really was able to crack the code of Anthony Pettis. And what Clay Guida did, which was so effective and worked so well, is he just pressured him, pressure wrestling, constant pressure, kept taking him down, letting him up, taking him down. He didn't give Anthony Pettis a shot to breathe. So that's one thing that always stands out to me about Clay Guida. Now, I think that those two should certainly retire. It was a competitive fight, but they're two older guys. BJ Penn, you're on a 7-fight losing streak. What more do you have to prove? You now held the record for the most consecutive losses in UFC history, which is now 7. BJ hasn't gotten a win, I think, since 2012, and I could pull that up to be certain, but it's really just getting ridiculous with him, and it's getting ridiculous as to why Dana White's letting him fight. BJ Penn isn't moving the meter anymore. Sure, the old school fans know who BJ Penn is, and it's cool to see him on a card, but a majority of us fans, the fans that really care about the sport, we don't want to see BJ fight anymore. We just don't. I just don't see the point in having BJ fight. He's 38 years old, or maybe even 40 or 39 years old, something like that. But he isn't. No, he's 40 right now, BJ. But he's an old 40. He's got a lot of ring experience. He's been fighting forever. And I was hearing some things that the only reason he really fights now and goes into fight camps is to keep himself sober, which is sad. And BJ Penn has been dealing with some domestic violence things. And it's just weird how there's a double standard in the UFC with the Tony Ferguson thing, which he didn't even beat his wife. He kind of just had a mental freak out, which that's all resolved, by the way. The restraining order has been pulled for those of you that don't know. Dana White wasn't going to let him fight until that was all figured out, and he stuck to his word. Why are we allowing BJ Penn to fight when he's still dealing with all that stuff? He obviously has early signs of CTE if you read some of the reports. Like a lot of these old fighters, like Matt Hughes almost beating his nephew over I believe it was his trailer or something like that, or his brother's trailer, some stupid shit like that. But a lot of these older fighters are dealing with CTE, and it's coming to light more so now than ever before, in my opinion. So, yeah, I just don't think he should be fighting anymore, in all honesty. And I think that Big Nog shouldn't be fighting either. Big Nog, I mean, how is he still fighting? I don't know how. For some reason, I always feel like Big Nog's retired. And then you'll see him on a card once every year when it's in Brazil or something. And, yeah, Big Nog is a legend of the game. But against these younger, more powerful guys, it's just... Nogueira's been injured so many times. He's been in so many wars. He's just clearly not the same fighter. And a young, athletic guy like Ryan Spann really showed everyone why Antonio Nogueira shouldn't be fighting anymore. He put him out cold in 2 minutes. So, yeah. And then we had Warlley Alves versus Sergio Moraes. That was a really good fight. Warlley Alves, he's got some powerful-ass leg kicks, man. Warlley Alves has been fighting for a long-ass time, and he still looks great, Warlley Alves. He really does. Now, what else can we talk about here? Talked about Big Nog. We talked about Warlley Alves. We'll get to the main card now. Hold on. This computer. You know what my biggest frustration is? I have a Mac and a PC. However, my Mac's a little bit fucked up. But man, PCs are fucking shit. It's like a toy computer at this point. I've been sitting here trying to click the main card for the last 2 minutes and it's not allowing me. Ridiculous. All right, so there we go. Give me the card. So let's just start off with going over, what's her name? Irene Aldana versus Bethe Correia. Bethe Correia, she didn't look bad. She hasn't fought in a while. I believe it's a year-plus layoff, and I know that these two were supposed to fight a while ago, but it kept getting canceled. It was back on again. It was back off again. So it was good that they got this fight over. Irene Aldana is pretty good. She's very long, and she's another Mexican fighter. She put on a great pace on Bethe Correia, and eventually welted on her, and she went for that. What was that? It was like an inverted armbar from Triangle, but it was an impressive submission, and I'm definitely impressed with Irene Aldana. I think she's definitely a top 12 to 10 contender right now in the women's bantamweight division. Thiago Alves versus Loriano Staropolo. Thiago Alves is another one. He's getting older. Hasn't been himself within the last 6 years, in all honesty. Hasn't been the same since he fought for the belt against GSP back at UFC 100. And Loriano Staropolo put it to him, man. That was a big win for Loriano Staropolo. Big name, I should say, for him to get a win over. And then after that, we had Jose Aldo versus Alexander Volkanovski. Okay, Alexander Volkanovski is fucking unbelievable. When he fought Chad Mendes the last time, I picked Chad Mendes to win. I just figured Chad Mendes, phenomenal wrestler. Alexander Volkanovski's striking is not going to be able to open up the same as it would if he was able to land some effective takedowns, because that is a big part of his game, is taking you down and opening up more opportunities on the feet to land with the hands. So Volkanovski, just so impressed with him, and I'm so impressed by his pressure, his pace, and his level changes. He changes levels a lot, and he wasn't able to land a takedown on Jose Aldo, if I remember correctly, because Jose Aldo, those of you that don't know, he's got some of the best takedown defense of all time. As we saw when he fought Frankie Edgar twice, Frankie only was able to land maybe 2 takedowns in their 2 fights, and they were both five-round fights. So Volkanovski's boxing is really good. I mean, the pace that he puts on you is unbelievable, and that pressure. He just pressured Jose Aldo until he welted. And honestly, thank God this wasn't a 5-round fight, because I think it could have led to Jose Aldo getting finished. Now, Jose Aldo is still a top 5 featherweight in the world. He's only 32 years old, or 31 years old, which is amazing. But you got to realize, Jose Aldo's been a champion since he's 19 years old in WEC, in that Brazilian organization, Jungle something. Was it Jungle Fights? Might have been. So yeah, Alexander Volkanovski is amazing. I think a fight that really stands out to me, and a fight I would really like to see, would be him versus Frankie Edgar. Now, they have two very similar styles, but I think Alexander Volkanovski might even have faster hands. And you know how much I love Frankie Edgar, and I'm biased towards Frankie Edgar because he is my favorite fighter. However, Volkanovski, I think, has better hands. Now, Frankie Edgar might have better wrestling, but Volkanovski's a national champ in New Zealand. And you could just tell that his wrestling is high level, the way he level changes, the way he shoots. He just really mixes everything in together so beautifully. He mixes in his wrestling with his boxing so well. And like I said, that pressure and pace he puts on you, it's going to be very hard to deal with. I'd also like to see a fight with him and Max Holloway. But let's see what plays out with Max. I know Frankie Edgar called him out and was saying, come on, like let's make this happen. They were supposed to fight like 2 or 3 times. Both kept getting injured and a couple of other things, and then finally Frankie fought Ortega, and we know how that went. So I think that it'd be an appropriate fight for Volkanovski to fight Frankie, and maybe the winner of that fight Holloway next, give Holloway some time to recover. Or Frankie versus Holloway, let Volkanovski sit there in the shadows, and let's make that happen eventually. So now the co-main event, Anderson Silva versus Jared Cannonier. I could have lived to not see that fight, in all honesty. Anderson Silva, he's old. He's 44 years old. I don't know what a lot of you expect out of Anderson Silva. Now, you can't look at Anderson Silva like the 36-year-old legend he was, and when he was knocking everyone out, and when he really looked like he was in the Matrix, and he wasn't even keeping his hands up. He had everything dropped. He was faking. He was fainting. It was just amazing to watch, and that's not the same Anderson Silva we have now. 44 years old. He's fighting a young killer in Jared Cannonier. Jared Cannonier's got power out the ass. He threw that one right inside low kick right behind the knee, and it shut all the nerves down in Anderson Silva's leg, and he just winced in pain, and that was it. The ref called the fight. Herb Dean called it right away. I was scared because I thought that he broke his leg, just like he did when he fought Chris Weidman back in the day, and I just don't know what more Anderson Silva has to prove. He's put on some good performances as of recently with the one with Israel Adesanya. Mind you, I don't think Israel Adesanya brought it 150% because because he looked up to him and it was his idol and he had a lot of respect for him overall. But man, I think it's time for Anderson to retire. I think it's been time for Anderson to retire. Legend of the sport, in his prime, I think is up there with the greatest of all time. Top 2, top 3, I'd say. It's really hard to pick. Or top 4. It's hard to decide between him, DJ, GSP, and John. But yeah, the ship has sailed for Anderson's career. I think it's over. Jared Cannonier was getting booed out the ass in Brazil, which he shouldn't have. He used the most effective strike to win. But that's just the Brazilian crowds. They're animals. And yeah, that was a heartbreaker, making me a little bit sad talking about that one. Not as sad as I was last night watching Game of Thrones, but pretty sad. Anyways, we have Rose Namajunas and Jessica Andrade in the main event. This was for the strawweight title. Now, Rose, on the feet, her striking looked great. She was controlling distance really well, and she was moving in and out of the pocket really well, and she was able to land some really significant strikes. However, Jessica Andrade, once she was able to get close enough, once she was able to grab her, and once she was able to find her range, it was only a matter of time before she picked her up and slammed her on her head and was able to put her out, because in that first round she slammed her and picked her up, but Rose was able to recover and get back up to her feet. But there's only so many of those you can take, and there's only so many shots you can take of Andrade. Andrade really is a bull. She is by far the hardest hitter in strawweight history. And once they were in the pocket, it was Andrade was landing those power shots. And like I said, those add up after a while. And once she grabbed her leg, she hit her with that single. She ran the pipe on it, lifted while running the pipe, and slammed her directly on her head. And that was very scary. The doctor rushed right in right away. I was scared. I was like, holy fuck, I hope Rose is okay. I was hoping that she didn't break her neck or anything like that, because the way the impact was, you could see her neck physically like, boom, like $1 Million Baby. With that movie with Clint Eastwood, when the little girl hits her neck on the stool and she becomes paralyzed. That's what it reminded me of. It was really scary shit, in all honesty. And I wasn't that big of a fan of it during the time, but afterwards I was like, all right, it's a pretty impressive knockout. I'm just glad that Rose is okay. That was my main concern there. And Rose said something interesting after the fight, that she's relieved that she's not the champion anymore. Don't love to hear that, but Rose is still progressing as a martial artist. She's going to continue to get better. And you know what? I would like to see these two run it back. Now, right now, what we got going on in the strawweight division is a little bit confusing. So we got Nina Ansaroff fighting Tatiana Suarez. We have Weili Zhang calling out Joanna Jędrzejczyk, which, mind you, Joanna beat Jessica Andrade, but Rose beat Joanna twice. So I think that Weili Zhang and Joanna should fight, and I think that Tatiana Suarez and Ansarov are going to fight to see who's next for the belt. However, I think that if Joanna and Weili Zhang fight, and mind you, Weili Zhang is an animal. I think she's on a 17-fight win streak, I believe, with 16 or 15 finishes, which is unheard of. She just put a whooping on Tecia Torres, and she looked great. She's one of the most well-rounded mixed martial artists I've seen in any women's division. She is the face for Chinese MMA at the moment, and that's the fight that I'm campaigning for, is Weili Zhang versus Joanna. Weili called her out a couple of times. Joanna hasn't really responded or anything like that, so... mind you, Weili Zhang isn't really a notable name. She doesn't have a lot of Instagram followers or anything like that, but I think she could definitely be the best strawweight in the world right now. So we'll see what happens. But Tatiana Suarez versus Nina Ansarov is happening. Or maybe they'll do Jessica Andrade versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk again, since Joanna beat her already. You never really know with this, but it's just hypothetical matchmaking. So that's it. I want to see what else we got going on this weekend. Maybe we don't have anything. Let's see. Let's just double check. But overall, it was a good weekend of fights. If you guys were watching the Eastern Conference Finals yesterday, Kawhi Leonard, ice motherfucking cold. Did you guys see that? He went to the quarter, dribbled his right hand, fade away, step back, boom, end of the series. Fuck the process. The process has been stopped dead in its tracks, and I'm happy. I'm not a big fan of Philadelphia sports in general. What I do know, however, is that Kyrie Irving is going to come to the Knicks with Kevin Durant. The more I keep saying it, the more I just hope it comes true. The more you say shit, more of the time it does come true. So I'm just going to keep saying it until it happens. But I don't know, what do we got next? Let's see for UFC. All right, well, anyways, I'm not even going to worry about that. Thank you guys for listening to Read ESPN's podcast. I'm finally back. I'm going to be putting out more content on Instagram and especially on YouTube. Thank you for listening. Hit the subscribe button and please follow Read ESPN on Instagram. We're trying to get Twitter up and going, just working out a couple of kinks. Is next weekend Dos Anjos versus Lee? It's either next weekend or within the next couple of weeks. So that'll be good. That is a UFC Rochester event, so anyone in the upstate New York area. Yeah, that's next weekend. We have Rafael Dos Anjos versus Kevin Lee. That's going to be a really good fight. The card of it's kind of shaky, but it's an ESPN Plus card, so if you're signed up for ESPN Plus, you can watch it. But Kevin Lee and Rafael Dos Anjos, that's a really good fight, and Kevin Lee can jump himself right into the top 10 of that welterweight division after coming off a lost ally at Quinta. So we'll see what happens. Thank you for listening to Read ESPN Sports Podcast. Thank you, and have a nice day.